Welcome you to the Newburyport Zoning Board of Appeals for our hearing August 13th, 2024. As you can see, we are a sparse board this evening. That means that we have only 4 voting members, myself included. Under our rules and our quorum, that essentially means that anyone going forward this evening in your application would need to have a unanimous yes vote by all of the members you see seated up here in order for your application to be successful. So I know that everyone's been alerted to sort of a minimum board for this evening. If there's anyone who wishes to request a fuller board or an evening with more members or all of the members, you still have an opportunity to do so. And if not, forever hold your peace, right? So I will give everyone an opportunity before we call each application. If you do wish to request a continuance, you have until the moment we start things to make that request. Without further ado, I'm going to take a quick moment, go through our roll call, and then we'll get into our public hearings. And it's a short room and it's kind of a short agenda. So I will try to be as brief as possible. And we'll just go through a quick lay of the land on what to expect in case this is the first time you've been to a hearing. I see many in the room who are certainly very aware of how these meetings run, but I'll just go through a quick snapshot of what we'll do and then get started. Okay, so calling the roll, we have absent members, but I'm going to just take a moment here to calling the roll. Mr. Stephen Delisle here, Mr. Ken Swanton absent, Mr. Walter Buchanan here, Gregory Bennick is absent, Ms. Lynn Scow absent, Mr. Larry Gint present, and Rob Champetti, I'm present. That is 4 present. That is a minimum board. We do have a quorum. Our 4 voting members, if it isn't obvious, is the 4 of us. That's sort of the legal criteria. So in case you're wondering if there are any invisible members, they're not going to be voting tonight. So the way the board will work this evening is I will go through the flow, and you may be familiar with this already. We'll follow the agenda in that sequence and order. We are broadcasting simultaneously through this OWL system online, so there are folks that are via hybrid. If they wish to participate, we have a process for that, and I'll explain it in just a moment. We'll start by announcing the application. I'll describe the application in sequence, and then describe the application's address, the applicant, and then a description of what relief is being sought, either a special permit for nonconformities, or variance, or all of the above, or several of the above. All of that will be described. And then finally, just in very natural language, specifically what an applicant is seeking, just so that you don't have to understand the zoning code in order to know exactly what an applicant's looking to do. Things like to construct an addition here, or to expand a porch there of X feet, whatever the case may be. Once I read the legal notice, we will open it up to the applicant or the applicant's representative. We ask, as is often the case because we're broadcasting, we ask that you kindly take the podium and the application will be presented. Once the application is fully presented, we will close that first portion of the hearing and go to public comment. Public comment is when anyone in the room or online can speak in connection with an application. You needn't be for or against, though you're welcome to say you're for or against, but make no mistake, you don't have to raise your hand during the pro call, the pro call or the con call. You can just simply stand up, come to the podium, give us your name and address. Our keeper of the minutes, Ms. Gretchen Joy, is also remotely taking down all of the notes. So in order to have a clear record, we ask that you kindly take the podium, give your name and address. Then we ask that you limit your remarks to about 2 minutes. We have discretion. I'll give you a high sign and a warning sign if it seems to be going long. We try to be courteous, but that's sort of how the process works. And give us your thoughts, whether pro, con, or none of the above. Just feel free to let us know what you think. I will go in the room with a show of hands, and then we will do an online rotation to see if there's anyone online that wishes to speak. If anyone is watching and logged on online, you simply need to raise your hand virtually by clicking the button on your Zoom screen, and we will unmute your mic. We ask you to do the same. Just give us your name and address. Once I've gone through the room and then online, we'll close that second portion of the hearing and go to the third, which is questions from the board. Each of us will have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant's representative. Know that if you have a public comment and you wish to share it, feel free to frame it in the form of a question if you so choose. but know that we mean you no discourtesy or disrespect by any means if we do not answer your question directly. It's no intended discourtesy to you. It's just simply the procedure in Robert's rules by which we will be hearing your comments, even if they're in the form of a question, and know well that you may very likely hear your question in some form or another sort of restated by one of the members of the board during this third section of our hearing, which is questions from the board. So don't stress if you don't hear an answer to your question. It's not us. It's not an intentional discourtesy. It's just the process. After we go through questions from the board, we'll close that and go into the final segment of our hearing, which is deliberations. We deliberate the legal criteria of the application, whether the legal criteria has been met in the sense and sensibility of each of these members and myself. And then once that is completed and you basically, everyone hears out loud the thinking of the board as we toil with the presentation, the evidence, the materials, and the standards and criteria to see whether or not the applicant has met their burden, whether we have additional questions. Once we're finished, we close that final segment of the public hearing, at which point I will invite a motion to approve from one of the members. It's always in the form of a motion to approve, and it's always in that in the affirmative, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that member who's making a motion to approve plans to support it, does support it, or will vote in favor of it. It's simply the procedure by which that motion is brought to the table. Once it's made in the form of a motion to approve and then seconded, we take a roll and each member will vote yes or no. And again, all members sitting this evening will have to vote in the affirmative for an application to be successful this evening. With that, and with my appreciation for your indulgence of all of that, we will get started and get right into our public hearing. We have the first application that is on our hearing, on our docket this evening. This is Hongsu Pan, and this is the application for 5 Hunter Drive. It's continued from 7/9/2024, but I understand it was only because the applicant was out of the country, so we haven't taken any presentation yet. And this is a special permit to allow an investor short-term rental unit at 5 Hunter Drive, and this is use 115B. May we hear from the applicant? Good evening.
Thank you for everybody here, and also want to thank my neighbors who are allowing me to do the Airbnb. My house is at 5 Hunter Drive in Upload Street, the middle of the street. And we started the Airbnb around almost 3 years ago. At that time, my son went to the college in New Hampshire. He has the autism and the ADHD and had to stay with us. So we just moved to New Hampshire temporarily. And my daughter will graduate high school in 2 years in 2026. So we plan to move back. So during this 5 years, we try to do the Airbnb to cover the cost, like tax, insurance, living, this kind of things. So we don't want to bother the neighbors too much. So we block the time during the year, open some days, and every week we ourselves go back to this house for days every week. And so far we got good reviews from Airbnb guests, and we also didn't get any complaint from neighbors. And so far we got at least 5 requests from neighbors in this couple of days. And we have 2 of them. One neighbor stayed at the house for a couple of weeks. Last winter, when their house got water pipe burst, the other neighbor, her family member came from other states. They get family gathering every year, so they also stay with us. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to help neighbors. So, yeah, basically that's it. We just want to do as little renting as possible, just to cover the cost. And also, we plan to move back in 2026. My daughter lives in
Okay, thank you, Ms. Penn, and we will go around through our process and we may have questions for you in a moment, but that's essentially the presentation about, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will now close that portion of the public hearing and go to public comment. Anyone in the room who wishes to be heard, please feel free to raise your hand. Seeing no hands in the room, we'll go online. Do we see anything online?
Audience.
So then that would be easy. We're a TV on in an empty room. All right, no one online. Perfect. So no hands. Okay, so we'll close that portion of the public hearing and go to questions from the board. You can feel free to sit down if you wish or stay at the podium in case we have. questions.
Thank you. Sorry, I have hearing loss.
No problem. We'll ask you questions if we have them. Thank you. Any questions from the board? Yes.
I had one, I noticed in there, they submitted documentation for the permit. Third bullet indicates they live in,
Ms. Penn, you can come on closer if you wish, just to hear better. Sorry.
they live in the house at least one day a week. Wouldn't that make them owner occupied rather than investment occupied?
Do you live in the house one day a week or sometimes one day?
Sometimes, my husband, my husband most of the time, he works at home. But every week he needs to go to company one day. Then the night, before he
Okay.
will come back.
I mean, we can treat it's before us, so we can treat it as, we can
Yeah.
proceed and it's,
Just,
if it were ever not one day a week, I mean, this relief, we can see it through.
it just would have been a
Yep.
written permit.
True.
Right. Okay, no other questions, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one question.
Huh?
It's three bedroom, three
Uh,
parking spaces.
Our driveway is very big. It's good for 6 cars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, 3 bedrooms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have no other questions. Thank you, Ms. Pan. We will close questions from the board, go into deliberations. Again, we're deliberating the criteria for a special permit to allow an investor short-term rental unit at 500 Drive. Who wants to kick off?
You want to go over the 9 bullet points?
We don't have to state them, but you're welcome to. We can incorporate by reference. But we kind of talked about that in the interest of sort of efficiencies. Since everything's online and published, we can simply make reference to them. Or if you find that one isn't met in your estimation, you can say, hey, all but this one I'm having trouble with, or anything in between.
Yeah. I'll start then, just by reference, the 9 bullets that we usually review seem to all be met. So I don't see a problem there. The only thing I did notice, there was one letter asking that the board reconsider short-term rental units in a neighborhood. With that said, I think
Yeah, I'm not sure we have that authority.
we don't. I think our council has indicated that short-term rental units can exist in.
Certainly, we can refer that letter to the council.
No, I was just mentioning that it's in the packet.
Yeah.
I didn't want to ignore the person's submittal,
Agreed.
but I think that based on determination that residential areas can have STRUs under specific conditions. This one seems to meet it. I would be in favor of approving this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any further deliberations?
It doesn't appear there's any law enforcement issues. Other than the overall. Now you are online, it appears they're in their house once a week, which is a very good thing, and it also appears that this is not a business for them, this is a temporary situation.
Agreed, yeah. Even more temporary than the 3-year timeline it has on its very best day. Any other questions?
Deliberation.
I'm sorry, any other deliberations?
I'm gonna just say what Larry says.
Question though, Ms. Pan, do you have, I should have asked this, do you have insurance on the property that has a rental rider?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, and
Great.
then this, has a special inspection for that. Right?
okay,
Because I did the, I applied for, I didn't.
very good. Any further deliberations before I close? Seeing none, we'll close deliberations. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for motion to approve the
Oh,
special.
excuse me, sorry, the two special conditions, you need that for. No.
Oh,
Let me look again. Yes, there are 2 special conditions.
I just added to the motion.
The motion? No, sorry.
okay, so make a motion to approve the special permit ZSP 2412 for 5 Hunter Drive. Subject to the special conditions that the applicant shall maintain valid short-term rental license per the city ordinance, and any online advertisement for the subject short-term rental unit shall represent said STRU consistent with the Newburyport zoning ordinance, this special permit, and any license issued therefore.
Motion's made. Do we have a second? Mr. Ginta, motion's made by Mr. Delisle, seconded by Mr. Ginta, and included in the motion are the 2 special conditions. Calling the roll, Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Ginta.
Yes.
Rob Champetti, yes, that's 4 in the affirmative. The ayes have it and the motion carries. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our next application. This is the application of Karen and Christopher Marquette, care of Lisa Mead, Tellerman and Costa LLC. The application is for 2 Fruit Street, is a special permit for nonconformities. The applicant seeks all necessary permits to construct a 115 square foot addition
coverage of 33.1%, where 30% is required, and a lot area of 3,088 square feet, where 8,000 square feet are required, and frontage of 36.5 feet, where 80 feet is required. You can go to the next slide, please. The proposal would increase the non-conforming lot coverage to 36.8%, so that's a 3.7% increase for the 115 square foot addition. And extend the structure to the rear, into the rear yard setback by 0.6. Because when I show you in a minute, I'm gonna show you the site plan, there's actually an angle on the rear yard. And so even though the house lines up obviously with the edge of the current house, the non-conformity, because the line is at an angle, it's a 0.6. Otherwise, the proposed addition doesn't impact any other non-conformity. If you could do the next slide, please. So here's my maps, right across the top, you see that's Prospect Street. Fruit Street is right through the middle, and you can see the outline of the structure, the half house. The right-hand side of this house is the Marquette side of the house. Next slide, please. And here is photographs from the house. So you can see in the top left-hand photograph, you see where currently the L kind of corner and nook is in the back. That's where the proposed addition is going to go. On the top right-hand, this is a view kind of from the corner of Prospect and Fruit Street. Bottom left, that's the side door. Actually, it's the front door, but it's on the side of the house, the main entry. And then on the bottom right is the back garden, which is where, right by where the addition's gonna go. Next. Here are other homes on Fruit Street. These are all Federalist. They all have similar double houses, not all of them, but many of them, very similar in make and size. We have the the Sanborn map at the bottom. What's interesting, I want to point out, which was of interest to the Fruit Street Historic Commission, is that there is a barn at the back corner of this lot, which was used until the 1980s. And so the driveway, which was important to the Historic District Commission, went back to that barn until the mid 1980s. So obviously that barn isn't on site anymore. You can also see, even from the Sanborn map, the addition on the left-hand side of the house actually extends well beyond the back wall of this house. And so we are obviously filling in the nook. We're not going back to that area. And you'll see that momentarily. Next slide, please. So as I said, it's a 115 square foot addition tucked into the rear. There's a flat roof with an open rail system, kind of a balcony. There are going to be some window replacements, 4 12-light windows with recessed panels on the east facade, a brick veneer on the foundation to match the existing, and then a 10-inch painted pilaster and coach light around the door to match the existing door, which we're going to talk about momentarily. Next slide, please. So here's the site plan. There's really not a lot going on here because the addition is quite small. You can see it in the peach color at the top. That's the 115 square foot addition. On this plan, you can see how the rear yard, the rear lot line goes at an angle. That's how we have that increase in the rear yard setback. And then this, you can also see how the driveway will pull in. We're going to show you some renderings in a minute that it's actually going to look more like a patio in that area when the car's not parked on that. Next slide, please. So here's the rendering. You can see how there's going to be a mixture of brick strips, so to speak, with the granite cobbles to give a more of a garden feel when it's not being used as a driveway. And then you can see the 115 square foot addition on the left-hand side of the drawing where it's tucked in to the back and really not visible from Fruit Street. Next slide, please. So here's the existing condition and the elevations. You can see this addition was very plainly put on the rear of this house. Patrick has designed some nice detail that I'm going to show in a minute that really gives a more appropriate feel to both the top of this line and with new fascia boards and new side corner boards. So I'll go over that in a minute. Next slide, please. And here's the proposed. So you can see the proposed side lights the lights on the side, which match the carriage lights around the main door to the house. You can see the proposed new, wood shutters on the house that don't currently exist, that are appropriate in size and actually obviously is a condition of the Historic District Commission requirements. You can see the lights for for the new room, and then of course the terrace above. Next slide, please. So here are the front view, the existing front view on the left of Fruit Street, and then the existing rear on the right. What I want you to kind of pay attention to is that addition. See how it's a very plain shed roof? That roof line is not going to change, but some trim is going to be added up there that makes it more appropriate to match with the federal style house. So if you go to the next slide, please. You can see, so again, nothing changes on the front except for the addition of the window boxes and the wood shutters. There will also be wood storm windows that will be replaced, the aluminum storm windows. But on the back, you can see while the roof line doesn't change, you can see what I said about the addition of the detail related to the fascia board and that the row trim across the top. And then you can see how it's a one-story addition also that just tucks into that back corner, and you can see the new arbor gate. Next slide, please. And here were details, the kind of a spec sheet that the Historic Commission likes to see. So it's a detail of the carriage light and the shutters. That's actually the spec sheet for the shutters. You can see the detail, the way the trellis is going to be, the railings are going to be for the terrace. And then the detail of the brick, ribbon brick and granite surface. And then the arbor wall. Next slide, please. So as I said, we received a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic District Commission. Next slide, please. So under the special permit for nonconformities, the board can grant a special permit for nonconformities where there is no new addition of a new nonconformity, and there is none here, and that the proposed changes will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing nonconformity. Here, the board can find, we believe that the proposed 115 square foot addition will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure. First, it's very small, tucked into the existing corner of the building in the back. It's not visible from Fruit Street. The brick veneer foundation matches the existing foundation. It's designed to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards by being subordinate to the main structure, stepped in from the original structure so as to separate the new from the old. Additionally, the detailing is complementary but not a replica of the historic Federalist structure. The materials of the facade are historically appropriate. Trim details, new fascia board, and existing second floor area to clean up that roof line. The scale and massing of the home or proposed addition remains consistent, which the rest of the neighborhood, which I'll show you in a minute. And the one-story nature keeps the scale intact and has minimal and negligible impact on lot coverage, actually. Next slide, please. And will also remain smaller than the adjacent home. So you can go to the next slide. That's fine. So here's the mind maps of the Fruit Street area. You can see many of the homes on Fruit Street have these one-story additions on the back with the flat roof. In this instance, the adjoining wall to this house is actually deeper into the property than what the current wall is, and we're not impacting that rear yard setback at all. And so from a scale and massing point of view, you can see that it matches the existing homes and structures in the district. Next slide, please. As I said, also the work materials are stylistically appropriate. The replacement of the aluminum storm windows, which is an intrusion into the historic district with wood, is appropriate. The window boxes, the doors with the coach lights, they highlight the important details. We have historically appropriate shutters and hardware. All the detailing is appropriate for the historic Federalist structure. Next slide, please. And then I would just say, when the board considers the term substantial, it means significant or greater extent. Here, we are extending the rear yard, not really by 0.6. And the increase in the lot coverage is 3.7% or 115 square feet. We don't believe the board would find that that would be substantial or significant. We have also provided 9 letters of support, from all of the neighbors. And you should have those and along with the Historic District Commission's approval. And with that, we'd ask the board to approve the proposed addition.
Very good. Thank you for that presentation. We'll close the presentation portion of our public hearing and go into public comment. Anyone in the room wish to speak in connection with the application? Seeing no hands in the room. Let's see. Do we have? Still have nobody. We have one attendee. Anyone online wish to speak in connection with the application? If you do, just please raise your hand and we'll hear from you. Seeing no hands raised, none in the room, we'll close public comment, go to questions from the board.
Yeah, I think I have one. The design elements on the proposed addition, having been vetted by the Fruit Street, it's not a commission, is it?
It is Historic
It is a
District Commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
Having been vetted by the Fruit Street Commission, the materials are all, all wood and all appropriate
All of that, yes.
for the commission.
That's exactly right. And, Mr. Delisle, their approval actually has, 4 conditions about meeting their design guidelines, like the
I
wood shutters.
didn't see
So
that.
those are all being, and they found the rest of them met their design.
Okay, yeah, I saw that about the shutters. I was wondering more about like the clapboards and stuff, like.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's all,
okay, yeah, I don't have any further questions. I think this is a really nice design.
Any other questions?
I just had one. I think you had mentioned that the addition was, designed to be subordinate to the main structure. Does it actually step back from the main house as you go back, if you will?
Yeah.
It looks like it does on the drawing.
it does slightly. So if, it was hard to see when it was kind of flashing, like we were in a disco. But, if you go to the site plan and blow it up, you
Yeah.
can see it does step back. I think it's about 6 inches is what Patrick said in the last presentation.
Okay,
But you can see it
all
does,
right, it does show.
it's actually the length of that corner board.
And my other question, but this answers it as well, as you can see, because of the angle of the backyard, we shrink from 15.1. The last thing, I assume the drawings when they were submitted to the Fruit Street historical people had the balcony on it,
Oh, yes,
and they were okay with it.
yes.
And I noticed the balcony faces 24 across that. And they were one of the letters of approval,
That's
so
correct.
balcony sometimes produces problems of themselves. This appears to be taken care of. No other questions, Chair. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Any other questions? I have none either. Thank you. We'll close questions and go to deliberations. Who wants to deliberate the criteria? And again, you can make reference to it specifically or incorporate by criteria and who wishes to kick off?
I'll start. We're just a special permit for non-conformity, so we have no new non-conformity. And I think for all the reasons that we were discussing, and from the presentation, there's no, this is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than what currently exists. It's a really beautiful design, well thought out, so I can fully support this.
I would just add to that, I think sometimes I'm not a fan of when we encroach into setbacks further. But I do think this is an unusually shaped lot. A very small encroachment on the setback is because it was a perfectly square lot. Nothing would have changed.
Anything else?
No,
Anything, Larry?
I support this. Design. Negative.
Yeah, I agree. Unless there's anything further, close deliberations and do we have a motion? And any conditions?
I'll make a motion to approve 2 Fruit Street, ZNC 24-25. As submitted, I don't see any special condition.
Second.
Okay, motion is made by Mr. Chen and seconded by Mr. Ginta. Following the roll, Mr. Delat,
Yes.
And Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Ginta?
Yes.
And Mr. Champetti, that's me. I vote yes. Four in the affirmative, the ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Good luck to you. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next matter. This is the application of Tanya R. Byrd for Belcher Street. This is a special permit for nonconformities. The applicant seeks all necessary approvals and permits to construct a deck within the front yard, the existing single-family structure, increasing an existing non-conforming front yard setback. May we hear from the applicant? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me tonight. Appreciate it. I'm Tanya Byrne. My husband Patrick and I are the owners of 4 Belcher Street. We purchased the home in 2016. We've lived in Newburyport for 20 years, raised our children here. We love this community. The home we purchased was built in 1754. And so in and of itself, it's a non-conforming structure. Because it's built on the road. The non-conformity is the front setback. Road is 30 feet. We currently have 11. Our front brick walkway and brick steps were in need of repair or replacement. I had noticed my 86-year-old father having a hard time stairs and not falling. We were talking about how we could accommodate placement of the stairs and making it safer for him. The narrow brick steps made it really difficult. So we would like to add a covered farmer's porch on the front of the home, be 8 feet deep. This would allow for ease of entry into the house, and shade and cover the south facing front of the house. The porch should be in keeping with other homes in the area, both in construction materials. It would increase the non-conformity of the home by decreasing frontage to 2.9 feet on one corner. All other aspects of the home are compliant, and we believe the construction of the porch would not be detrimental to the neighborhood or the condition of the property.
Very good. Anything further?
I apologize, I did not, because we needed a permit before we started tearing things apart.
That is not as unusual as you would think, but thank you. And we'll move through our process, and I appreciate your presentation. Okay, so we'll close the presentation portion of this hearing and go to public comment. Anyone in the room who wishes to speak in connection with the application? Seeing no hands, we can go online and see if we have anyone who wishes to speak online. Seeing none, and no hands again in the room, we'll close public comment. Questions from the board? Anyone have any questions?
Is there a finished picture?
And
That's it. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah. Do you have any feedback from your neighbors or anything like that? Have you talked to any of your neighbors about this or? I'll dovetail that into sort of my next question, which is you're on a really funky little corner thing. Could you sort of maybe explain how that works a little bit? And do you have you don't have any really, you kind of have neighbors across the street, but they're kind of far away. And then you have neighbors to the left and to the right.
correct.
Yeah.
So, as you turn onto Belcher Street, the house on the corner is to Belcher. And it's actually in the process of being sold and new tenant owners are coming in. The current owner, Chase, was okay with it. He would be the next door neighbor. To the left, our house, kind of a wooded area. It actually did butt up against Mosley before we purchased it. When we purchased, the lot was subdivided, and the people who purchased that lot built the house facing the opposite direction. Even to Wable, they're not. The side of the wooded lot, kind of don't even know how to describe it. They are set way back. So there's no one that really looks directly at us.
With regard to the front,
Mhm.
that's on the little funky curve. So that's where you're going from 11 feet setback to the 2.9.
Yeah, right. Right there.
Yeah.
There's really very little front yard to begin with.
But the dark line is your property line, correct?
Correct.
And then that light line at the end of the walkway that's the street,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yeah. It's
Unique.
strange. Yeah.
And so that area to the left is also kind of like wood, like
It's a
shrubs or
Yeah,
kind of
exactly, like the
trees.
city owns it, it's just wooded area, they actually, had to cut through that to bring the water and electric into the lot next to it. Yeah, it's wooded,
Really unique.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
I had a couple, I took this look here, and if you look at the satellite views, the house is quite a ways from the street, it's not 11 feet, so there must be a, if you will, a right of way into the lawn. So I think this, although I understand it's on there, see how far back that is? That's Hunter. Anyways, is the addition, is it all addition, or is there a set of steps coming down that's encroaching on the setback?
It'll be 2 steps,
2 steps, so is your 8-foot addition including the steps or excluding? The steps? Including, okay.
But that 8-foot addition is exactly in the set. Yeah.
How far back from the street that is?
so the neighbors on the other side of Belcher Street, as you can see right at the bottom right of the street there. They have a concrete patio that goes right to too. I don't think they haven't said anything, they've just asked what we were doing. And the neighbors on the just asked what we were doing and wondering when to be done.
Just out of curiosity, where did the 8 feet come from? I know that's a nice handsome porch, but did you look at 7, 6, and 5?
We would be willing to do 6, 8 would give us room to be in the forefront. I'm going to dish and coffee out there in the morning. So, that was the plan. I am not opposed to it, but that was my dream.
No other questions, Chair.
very good. And anything else? I've got no that haven't been addressed. Seeing no further questions, we'll close questions and go into deliberations. And anyone who wishes to start, feel free. We're going to deliberate the special criteria or the special permit criteria.
Can start with the criteria, I mean, they're the same as before for special permit, there is no new nonconformity, however, it is exacerbating the setback quite a bit. I don't think it would be more detrimental to, if you drive down there, it's kind of like a hidden little nook in that area of town. So I think as far as scaling massing, my biggest concern is it's just so close. On paper, it seems closer when you just stand there and look at street. Street to the house look like it was 15, 20 feet. but obviously it's not. That's my biggest concern, it's very. 2.9 is tight in that area. If it was in the south end, no problem. But I'm not, still on the fence. I'll let the rest of the team speak.
Yeah, I would agree that it's a good idea. Sure, I can definitely agree with that. It's really encroaching into that front yard setback. Going from 11 where 30 is required, I think it was 30, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, down to 2.9, that's, even though we all agree that the property line and the street line are not synced up in this location, this is the top.
My thoughts are, is this appears to be a neighborhood built before zoning. And when you really start to look at the properties and position and the way the street just sort of ends with forest. This addition, obviously, it does, bring them from 11 feet, which is already not conforming to 2.9. But when you look at that map, it doesn't really affect it. It has no impact on any neighbor, has no impact on the street, because there's so much. The people in South End would love to have the street down. So just looking at the configuration of the neighborhood and the way everything's set, yeah, I mean, it's making it worse, but it really is affecting nobody. And if it brings more value to the home and happiness to the homeowner, I just don't see how it makes things any worse than this sort of unusual neighborhood, you know? It's very unusual the way everything's positioned.
Yeah, I have to say I agree, with Mr. Ginton, with certainly respect to colleagues that may disagree. I think it's a tough one. It's a historic structure, for sure, but, this is, I think, unique in that oftentimes we have impact that's raised by those most impacted, which are those that live on a street in a neighborhood, who are inclined to have an opinion, for sure, especially in a place like Newburyport. And it doesn't even need to necessarily be in the South End or Plum Island. We hear it all. Seeing that there is no one this evening, bless you, who has shared their, even neutral sense, much less negative sense of this, is very persuasive in, I guess, in their silence. We would definitely be hearing things if it felt like it was impacting others. That's not the only criteria we consider. In fact, it's really not any, it's just, it's a component of the overall criteria, but it's not one of the legal criteria we actually consider. So we take it into very, very sharp account. Seeing no abutters that are opposed to it, speaks volumes in that silence for me. I do get it's an exacerbation of a pre-existing nonconformity, for sure. It's a historic home that predates zoning and many other things, for sure. It's older than the country it's in, for sure. Yet time goes on and we try, we also don't have closets with 3 hooks in them because we have more than 3 outfits. One for day, one for evening, and one for church, right? We have indoor kitchens and indoor plumbing, and we deal with that with sensitivity and I think empathy for the built environment. I have no, under these circumstances, under other circumstances, I might be very dramatically differently minded. But here, I can be persuaded. I don't know how my colleagues feel, but if it felt like that it weren't in the cards, we would certainly, I would encourage us to think that out loud so that we can give the applicant an opportunity to withdraw prejudice, to revisit or revamp or redial. So we didn't give it.
Could I? Yeah, please. I assume that picture is the frame for the. So can you go to the next picture, the next photo down? Next. So that's what it looks like from the street with the porch on it. It doesn't look like it's anywhere near the street.
That's the 8 feet, that's the full extent of the 8 feet.
That's,
The-
that's,
It's because the city
And that truck
property.
is on the ground.
the
Yeah.
city property-
The landscape property suggests a property line further into the right of way that is actually the right of way. So,
So with that view, I feel more comfortable supporting. I just wanted to bring that up.
yeah.
I was
that's
going
great.
through the pictures and at first I was thinking those might have been the step. That's the actual frame.
Yeah.
That you weren't supposed to put up yet.
And it's been there for several weeks. As soon as
Okay,
we realized
So
we
I-
anything.
based on that picture. That's,
Now, if it were a closed structure, would you feel different in that open porch?
ooh, like it was a real true front addition, like a pump out.
Yeah. Like, should we ask for that? Should it,
Never enclose it.
yeah, would be closed or something?
Yeah, think of it.
Andy, is that something that we could do?
Sorry, you could approve a enclosure, but that's not being proposed in this.
No,
No,
to
exclude.
a condition that there would be no,
Oh,
there would be no.
yeah, you could add verbiage that can. You could impose that condition you wanted to, if you felt that was important.
Would that be acceptable?
Yes,
You've never enclosed it, and you wouldn't rent the porch as an Airbnb?
No need for that special condition.
The only thing I would say to that is word enclosed. Someday somebody might want to enclose it, but just more screening.
Screening, yeah.
So-
Other than my.
Yeah.
Other than my.
I get, you need a whole remodel.
Like
an addition.
insulate. Yeah.
Yeah, so we want to make sure it's 3 Cs or whatever the terminology is.
Yeah.
We could add verbiage to say, other than bug screens, or, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or if that's still, that could provide that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that.
I would be okay.
I would be okay with that as well.
Would you be okay with that?
Mhm, absolutely.
All right, any further deliberations? Thank you for the time to sort of parse that out. It's important. It's important in this case. No further deliberations.
Yeah, I would just say that I think what we're contemplating here, in my analysis, would not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than what currently exists. In that the framing that we're looking at to kind of guide us doesn't exist for the purposes of this discussion, right? We have to think about the structure with no porch, and then say that adding that porch would not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
All right, I will close deliberations and invite a motion to approve conditions.
I'll make that motion. Make the motion to approve the special permit conformities for 4 Belcher Street, ZNC 24-26, with the condition that the porch not be enclosed, with the exception of fly screen.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Very good. Motion is made by Mr. Delisle and seconded by Mr. Shannon, calling the roll, Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Gibson.
Yes.
Rob Champetti, yes, that's 4 in the affirmative, the ayes have it, motion carries. Your deck is now right with Jesus. Thank you for your patience.
Newburyport.
Yeah, which is more important.
Okay, thank you for your patience, and your time. Okay, calling the final application that we have on our agenda this evening. This is the, application of 7 Spring Street, Unit 1. Applicant's counsel, Lisa Mead, Tellerman and Costa LLC. Applicant is seeking a special permit for nonconformities for the demolition of a deck and a single-story addition. Attorney Mead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Lisa Mead, me telling Costa 30 Green Street, Newburyport. And with me this evening is Scott and Kara Kratikia. We're here. Eileen Graff is the architect of the project, and she was, due to some unexpected circumstances, not able to be here this evening. So again, I'm gonna try to do justice to her drawings. This is, as the chair suggested, a request for a special permit for nonconformities on the house at 7 Spring Street. 7 and 9 Spring Street are condominiums, they're two separate units. I will tell the board up front, we have permission, obviously, from the second condominium owner to do this because, of course, we will have to amend the condominium documents. The 7 is on the left-hand side of the plan that you see here. This is 7 and 9 Spring Street. And the house on the part of the house on the left is 7. And you can see in the back of the deck that currently exists where the one-story addition is going to go. This property is located in the R2 zoning district and under the DCOD. The house was built around 1845 according to the assessor's cards. 1850 according to the assessor's cards, 1845 according to the district data sheets. There is no Form B, and we're removing 10% of the exterior wall, so the DCOD is not triggered. The proposal is to add 222 square feet of floor area, which will bring up the unit to 2,009 square feet, where it's currently 1,787. I will tell you that if you look at the deck itself is 117 square feet. So we're replacing the deck, and so the total floor area is 222 square feet, which is 105 square feet difference. The property has nonconformities for a lot area of 4,994, where 15,000 is required. 75.91 feet of frontage, where 120 is required. The lot coverage is non-conforming at 35.3%, or a maximum of 25% is allowed. The front yard setback is 4.3, where 25 feet is required. Right side setback is 11.7, where 20 feet is required. And the left side setback is 11.7, where 20 feet is required. And the rear setback is 21.6, where 25 is required. The applicant proposes to further extend the rear yard setback to 21.4. We'll show you that it's a slight increase when you see it. And then the lot coverage to 39.7. Again, just to be clear with the board, as you know, the deck currently doesn't count against lot coverage, but now the whole addition will count against lot coverage. So the actual lot coverage, if you will, footprint that's being increased is actually only 2.2%, because if you subtract the deck size from the square footage of the addition, that's what you get. Next slide, please. So, and next slide, please. So those are the changes. So here we have 7 Spring Street, as I said, there's the deck in the back, and you have 9 Spring Street on the back, on the right-hand side, which actually already has an addition on the back. Next slide, please. And here is the site plan, so you can actually see what's happening. So currently, we're going to 21.6, where it's currently 21.4. And that's because, again, it's a little bit of an angle there. So you can see the corner is at 21.4, but the rear is staying the same at 21.6. So that corner has a little bit of a jog to it. And then you can see where the porch or the deck actually sits right now. And then the addition sits over that and is extended over the brick area on the left. And you can see on the right, where the center line of this unit is, Eileen has not taken the addition all the way over to the center line. There's currently a fence that runs between there, and there will be a gap that will continue to be there. On the left side, you can see there's a slight bump in. I think she would say it's about 6 inches in from the original structure, so it's bumped in on the rear as well. Next slide, please. So here's a front view of the house, 7 Spring Street on the left. Next slide, please. And here is from the back of the driveway, so you can see the entryway in the back. So this is the back of the driveway. Next slide, please. And here's the back of the house. You can see that fence that I was talking about. The addition won't quite go to. This is a very high deck. That's why it counts against the rear yard setback. But you can see now where the addition is proposed to go. The next slide, please. And then this is looking down the driveway at the existing garage. And next slide, please. So as I said, the proposal is to remove the deck, construct a single-story addition, maintain the roof line will be undisturbed. Siding and windows complement but don't duplicate the existing structure. We're proposing horizontal boarding on the structure with a hung roof canopy, which we'll show you in a minute. And there's no changes to the front elevation of the house. In fact, it's very difficult to see this addition from Spring Street. Next slide. So here are Eileen's drawings. The existing are at the top. So we start with the left-hand side. Excuse me, so that's the side of the house, the left-hand side of the house. The bottom is the proposed, and you can see the one-story addition on the back that's being proposed. And you can see the horizontal boards, so it doesn't match exactly. It's not clapboards, they're literally horizontal boards. They're a little bit wider, according to Eileen. And then you can see the hang roof canopy over that door in the back, so you can see that as well. On the right-hand side, you have the rear elevation. And so at the top is the existing, so you can see where the porch and the stairs run off that back porch. On the bottom is the proposed condition. You can see the proposed addition. She maintains the windows top, so they continue to match everything. And then obviously to make the addition stand off a little bit and not match exactly the existing structure, you can see the windows that have been proposed to provide light into the back end of that house. Next slide, please. And so, actually, if you could go back one slide, please. Just as an aside, on the bottom right where it says A01, you see the drawing that has that's actually the left-hand side of this addition. So we wanted to make sure we showed you that on the left-hand side of the addition, there's no windows. Right. And so there was no reason to draw a left-hand elevation. So Eileen added the left-hand elevation. There's no windows. You're not gonna be able to see it. It's, up against the house, but that's what the left-hand elevation is. Thank you, Indy. And so then here's the front elevation. Obviously, there are no changes to the front elevation from the existing. So the board may grant a special permit, of course, where it finds that there are no new nonconformities, and here there are no new nonconformities. The next is that the proposed addition is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing condition. Here, the proposal is to add only 222 square feet of floor area. Again, as I said earlier, the existing deck is 117 square feet, so the difference in the coverage, so to speak, is 105 square feet. The proposed single-story addition will not be visible when viewing the structure straight on from the street, or even frankly from the side on Spring Street. The main roof line will not be disturbed. The siding and windows of the addition will complement, but not be a duplicate of the existing, but really complement the existing siding and windows. The rear setback will be extended by 0.2, as you saw in that one little, just because of the way the line is in the back. And the lot coverage will be increased by 4.4%. But as I said earlier, of that 4.4%, 2.4 is actually the deck already. So a 2% increase, so to speak, of that, if that were to be lot coverage, if the deck were to be counted towards lot coverage, which of course it isn't, but just to give you an idea of the size. In the context of the wider neighborhood, the addition is certainly modest to small. It will not be detrimental given the dynamic of the neighborhood itself. If you can go to the next slide, please. So currently, this unit ranks 15th out of 21 units touching Spring Street when we analyze them. With the addition, it would rank 13th out of 21. So really, it stays about the same. The proposal will be less than the average square footage with the adjustment for the addition. So we go from 1787 to 2009 square feet. Next slide, please. So we kind of did a ranking so you could see everything on Spring Street. You can disregard that Spring Street outbuilding. That's at 17. We didn't include the outbuilding. That's why we just put it on there. But anyway, so currently it ranks 15th at 1787. you know, there are very large houses on Spring Street, 5 Spring Street, for example, is very large. But this ranks towards the middle to the bottom of, the size, even with the addition. And those are the various units. Next slide, please. So, here's 1 Spring Street. Now, this is as you come around the corner off of, Fair Street. Next slide, please. And this is 2 Spring Street across the street. That also is, faces Fair Street as well. Next slide. And then we have 3 Springs, so 3 to 5 Spring is a double unit here. Dee and Suzanne live here. I know them very well. Next slide, please. And here's 4 Spring Street across the street. You can see these are all pretty good sized homes. Next slide, please. And then that's 3 and 5. That's the street view of 3 and 5 Spring Street. Next slide, please. And we're moving down to the opposite side. We have the 10 Spring Street, which is kind of a funky little house that's set back. And then we have 10 Spring Street again up against the street. Next slide, please. And then we have 9 Spring Street, which is the other side of this application. Next slide, please. And
Sorry.
and then we have 11 Spring Street right down the street, which is a nice sized home. Next slide, please. And then we have the row house 1218 Spring Street, which is probably one of my favorite row houses in the city of Newburyport. And then we have 10 Spring Street across the way, which they're all, you know, the 12 to 18 sizes are about what we're gonna have in the end here. Next slide, please. And then 13 Spring Street on down the street, closer to Federal. Next slide. And 15 Spring Street. Next slide. 20, as you move on down the street. Next slide, please. And 24. Next slide. And then 40 and 30, 40 Fair and 30 Essex, which are at the base of Spring Street. Next slide, please. And then there's the other shot of next slide. And then 19 Spring and 50 Federal, those face Federal, but have a side on Spring Street. Next slide. And there's the other side. Next slide. So with that, we think that we've shown you that the house is still about the same size as it was before. It falls about in the same range. It's not going to be some gigantic thing. It's a modest addition at that. And certainly the board can find that it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing conditions. The applicants have provided letters of support from their immediate neighbors, and of course, obviously, 7 Spring Street, and then Dee and Suzanne at 3 and 5 Spring Street, as well as 11 Spring Street. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
We'll close that portion of the public hearing. There are questions from the audience. Anyone wish to speak in connection with the application? Seeing no hands in the room and no hands online. Nobody online. We'll close public comment. Questions from the board? Any questions?
You spoke a couple times about the lot coverage, and that seems okay to me. Question I had for you was regarding the open space, because you're ending up right at 40% on the open space. And is that to tuck you in under the wire? Is that the sacrifice of that 6-foot portion of the driveway?
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I didn't, so we're gonna remove part of the driveway in
And then
order
that
to.
becomes like plantings or
Right.
whatever, grass.
Correct. I think they'll probably, but yes, it'll be some kind of vegetation.
Okay, and that gets you under the wire on that.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I have none either. We'll close questions from the board and go into deliberations. We'll deliberating the special permit for special permit criteria for non-conformity. So let's start off.
Yeah. Once again, we have no new non-conformities here, and we have a nice plan and a good presentation. I think it was very clear, and I think I have a good understanding of what's going to happen here. And I don't think that there's any way that this will be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than what currently exists. So I can support this.
Anyone else?
I have to agree. I'm a little concerned when I first saw this about the lot coverage, but the open space is right on the money. And I know they had to tweak it to get it there. But, kudos for doing. I think it's imperative, obviously, that the homeowner next door condos also be on board with this. That's a big. So that said, again, great presentation. To the point where I didn't have any questions. I think it's a reasonable addition, somewhat modest, and I can support it.
Larry, anything further? I do too. We will go ahead and close deliberations, and do we have a motion to approve it? If so, any conditions?
I'll make motion to approve 7 Spring Street, Unit 1, ZNC 24-27. Submitted, does not appear to trigger the trees and sidewalks, special condition.
Very good. Motion is made by Mr. Shannon. Any, do we have a second? I'll second. Delisle, motion is made. Mr. Shannon, seconded by Mr. Delisle. Calling the roll, Mr. Delisle?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Ginta? Yes. Yes, that's 4 in the affirmative. The ayes have it, and motion carries. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Okay, that concludes our public hearings for this evening, and we can close the public hearing section and go into business meeting. Do we have any comments on Gretchen's minutes from 7/23/2024? Any revisions or comments? Gretchen's with us online, right? Is she with us online? Okay, Gretchen, we have no comments or changes. Bless it be. Let's just move. Let's get at. Let's finish while we can.
Should we approve them?
We're gonna approve it. Make a motion to approve it. You started to say something. I got nervous. Like he said, there's a semicolon and an Aaron Jarrett. Let's get-
I
let's
like
get rid
the
of that.
color after.
There's an Aaron Jarrett. We're gonna get rid of that. All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
All right, seconded. And all those in favor say aye. Ayes have it, and motion carries. Thank you, Gretchen. I don't have any updates. Andy, anything?
No, I appreciate a very short meeting. I would note, I would have fiduciary duty, if nothing else, to just note to you two things probably on the radar, just so you're aware of them if you're not. Kmart, there's been discussion of redevelopment of the Kmart site.
Right. What do we know? What do we know about?
What we know right now is it's somewhere between two, well, again, depending on what your questions are and where things go.
I mean, residential, commercial, mixed use?
Residential, 200 to 212 units, right now is the discussion. There's simultaneous discussions with the city council zone versus a so-called friendly 40B or 40B permit that would be a comprehensive permit to you as a board. The last time you had one was Woodman Way.
Yep.
And it's been quite a while, but I just wanted to note that to you that there's a possibility, we're not sure just yet, that that's redevelopment for residential. Again, there's other questions that come about with development, but if it may run its way to you as a comprehensive partner. So if you have any questions about that, let me know.
Do we know who's bringing the potential application?
We know that the landowner is involved, but I suspect there's a private development team. We're not heard all the details of that they will be coming forward as a, more as a housing developer, probably on the land that's owned by right now we're coordinating with the landowner.
Okay. 200 to 212 units, that would be the largest development since Woodman Way.
How many stories?
Right now, it's 4 stories. There's potential, depending on we haven't seen if there's an updated plans, potential for some portion of that maybe to be a bit. There's parking underneath, is the current concept. Again, this is a concept that we can see if it's permitted yet. It'll require either zoning changes or comprehensive permit review.
Any retail component?
There's no retail component. It has been a source of discussion actually, is loss of commercial space per se. I'll just say, and I've had this discussion about this before, I'm not bothered by having buildings that are solely residential, but I would be concerned if we make that a systemic pattern throughout the district, everything becomes all just, buildings of residential. That's not really a neighborhood. That's not creating, vibrant mixed use. So one thing that I would like to see, if at all possible, is trying to sculpt the first floor so it's at the ceiling height and the transparency. It's sort of designed in there as flexibility structurally, so we're not precluding the future. And perhaps at the 4-yard district, we've already sort of allowed it to unfold in the future there. Again, that was the idea over there.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Are those rental or for sale units or are they?
That is not, I don't have that answer yet. Yeah, we posited that question with Bell and
Yeah.
clarify. I think it's an important factor, but we haven't got it.
Will these count towards the MBTA?
They would.
We would count under 40B for the subsidized housing inventory, but technically for the MBTA communities, which we're actually addressing that through the expansion of 40 district elsewhere in the city by the train station. So this won't count to satisfy MBTA communities, but it would, depending on the nature of the affordable housing, if it's 25% or if it's rental, depending on the nature, if it's rental, all units in the building, kind of that 25% would count. So it's a big difference if all of them are rentals than if they're all condos and only 25% of the apartment.
Question for you. You use the term zoning. Yes, but my understanding is that the city council is trying to create overlay district for spot zoning like we did on State Street. Isn't it more of an overlay district than creating new zoning?
It is an overlay, it is proposed to be an overlay district. I put aside for a minute, we've had the discussion over the years about that the term spot zoning has been used a lot, but sometimes it's used too frequently. In essence, as long as the city council, through the discussion with the planning board and others involved, can make a rationale as to why that unique property, even if it's one parcel, has to have a different zoning of some nature for some reason, or redevelopment of some type that, is different than, say, the surrounding area. There can be a reason for that relatively small piece of land, one or two parcels. Brownsville is one of them, Federal Street, properties were a couple of them. It can be relatively small in nature.
I only position it that way because when we got State Street, I believe the residents had this view that we had all of this room to maneuver. But when the meeting really unfolded, you had a developer that plan that council had said everything that the mayor. And we all kind of looked at each other and said, what do you do? And so hoping with an overlay district, it gives us more of a leeway of being able to interject and have thoughts and criticisms of what's coming at us versus it coming to us all packaged with a bow on it.
Yeah, it's probably worth noting or clarifying in there that, at least as of right now, depending on what the conversation goes and which track it takes, the current zoning draft or proposal would actually route permitting through to the planning board. So it wouldn't necessarily come to you, whereas if it's a comprehensive permit, it would be routed to you. So interesting to see whether this board will end up with the permit or not in that context, yeah.
Okay, so we might be out of it.
Not sure yet, yeah, it's an evolving discussion.
And someone was talking to me about like, if they did this building one way, then you'd be all set with 40B. And I'm like, yeah, but as somebody who is the ward councilor for this district, it's kind of a dangerous game because you could say, sure, build 200 affordable units here in this little corner of your property. And then we're gonna change the zoning so you can build housing in the rest of your property in a couple of years. The next thing you know, the residents are like, how did 500 units get foreclosed? It's like, well, it happened because everybody wasn't moving in the same direction at the same time. It happened over. So I know the master plan and the view for story retail with rent Bob, which makes sense. But right now, you're just talking about one little piece of one little parcel. So what is the big picture?
That's a very good point, yes. And there'll be more, what happened in essence was we were parsing out MBTA communities from Story Avenue. There was a decision, essentially at the end of the day to completely parse out, and even though we have three options in the city, downtown, 40R district, or Story Avenue, those are the ways we could solve MBTA communities beyond the existing 40R. And the city council decided to focus on expanding the existing 40R district. So that leaves Story Avenue completely local zoning, let's say, not competed, so to say. There are some certain, parameters at the state level, but not quite as, limited by MBTA communities. So the current discussion is more akin to and actually references the 40-yard districts paralleling that part of the process, by board and review. Yeah, and our, original assumption was we would study that area, and we basically postponed that from the spring to the fall. Well, council was kind of pushing it, MBTA communities, budget cycle, and then summer season, everybody said, wait till the fall, we'll talk about that, Story Avenue area then. And then during that time, of course, since last November, at least, or December, we've had discussions with the landowner who's come in and said, I want to do a project, and there's been interest, both in the council and the administration in advancing something possibly, sooner for that particular portion of the area. Point, begging the discussion, what is the larger vision? I don't have any question myself about adding residential per se across the district, so to speak, or the area. Redevelopment of larger parking lots, let's say, in a, more of a Newburyport village kind of way, over time. But to your point, we have to think about the larger picture and how does is this concentration, how does that fit in there?
Getting out by Giuseppe's at that light is already a nightmare. A lot of those little things, that's why I look at Port Plaza as one thing and not a bunch of little things.
Yeah,
So I just throw that at you as a planning office, plan it all out.
Yeah.
Because you may decide what you want to do where Kmart might be smaller than you're thinking now.
Mhm.
With the sort of carrot that you're gonna get the rest of
yeah.
the plaza over time. But Mr. Kaplan will take it for everything you give it to.
I think he's interested in the smallest parcel of the larger portfolio being sort of carved out here for this piece. That's right.
That gives them the ability to do what Larry's saying later.
Yeah, retain the rest of the commercial portfolio whatever it becomes, yeah. But again, I think that's, to your point, I guess to some degree, I think that's pretty well acknowledged to some degree, the council, across the planning board, and others, there's sort of an understanding that that's one of the judgment calls being made here at the end of the day. And I think there is at least some acknowledgement that there might be a higher density, depending on where you stand on this. Folks who are interested in having something happen here may be interested in or willing to have a higher density there than say elsewhere in the district later on, as we get into that discussion there. And maybe that's to your point, is there a disparity or difference there? But it definitely seems to me that there seems to be some palette for, a density or portion there. And of course, people may have different reasons for wanting,
Can the schools handle that? Someone
I can't speak directly.
that used to be a big town I used to live in. We saw 200 units coming in and we'd do everything we could to stop it because the schools can't handle it.
Yeah,
We'd make them all one bed.
we had started discussion, when we started looking at Story Avenue, we weren't sure where MBTA community was going, discussion with the school department about overall, school age children impact and so forth. So we started that discussion. Essentially we got some initial feedback, not necessarily going to be, a huge issue per se, at least not immediately. And then, but we didn't really close that completely because basically the numbers we were getting hadn't been running back to the school departments that are, 50 years down the road, all new people and new bedrooms and new kids, and there's a, broad brush assumption as to how many bedrooms that is in these units that are being built up, right? Because some of it's premised on zoning changes and things like that.
Right.
So it's a lot of hypotheticals to assume how many bedrooms the kids, but I think at the end of the day, the larger district, area would be a little more of an impact to the school department. This one particular project is something I think it could be reasonably absorbed based on the discussions I've had there's about, zoning and 40-yard district in this, but I think the larger district would be something that requires more substantial, you're talking about capital expansion, more classroom space, and
Yeah.
things like that. So,
And high school take 200 kids. It's not a very big high school. It's a 2,000 person high school, fine.
Yeah.
It's small. compared to-
Yeah. And that's why I think, as we discussed.
Yeah.
All about the city and then where that work it's enough, so to speak, or right,
The problem they can have with the 40B is. So.
Yeah.
See, you're afraid of it. You wanna try to manage a bad situation the best you can. But then say, for instance, you say, yeah, you can build 200 units at the Kmart and now we're okay with 40B. Then you rezone Story Avenue and everybody puts condos in. And now you're back under the 40B because of the expansion. The whole thing, so in one way, it's like, do I make the deal with the devil to hit 40 feet for a short time? Because you know it'll be a short time. Or, you see, you have to do that math. You have to do that math and say, how many more units will we allow in, which would give us below the 40 feet? Because you just made this big deal to get there, but if you rezone the rest of the district, you're gonna lose that.
I will say I think it's unfortunate that we have a mishmash of, state regulations and statutes that kind of create the structure we have to work with. I think that the, recently adopted, Affordable Housing Act, I think is a, a good thing in terms of changes, overall, that are needed for the housing side, of the Commonwealth, but it's, it's a mess, but it's an array of regulations that sometimes seemingly conflict with each other or result in absurd, conditions or things like that. And we have to navigate that as best we can with the,
But you got a math equation. to figure out.
What about the wastewater treatment plant? Wasn't it, at some point, wasn't that some sort of bottleneck in terms of
yeah.
city?
Yeah.
From what I can tell in recent discussions, it doesn't seem like that is the capacity of the plants would be our issues. But definitely it looks like they'd be localized, like lift station have to be, installed and then, either maintained by them, or the city to maintain. Things like that localized to distribute or, push a little harder, but the sewer, but it looks like the plants themselves can handle that. However, as you know, or at least as I know, there are lots of substantial water and sewer, more so the water side, I would say, but improvements that have to be done, capital projects to protect the water supply, for instance, a little bit lesser, so I would say the sewer side, but even the plants themselves. So the plant is in, projected sea level rise right now, so we're trying to, working at protecting the walls right the sides to it, but there will be capital improvements to those facilities even as they are. Anyway, I didn't mean to, I just wanted you to know there was a possibility that that project might be coming to you. Of course, if there's more questions, Matt, that we are as prepared as possible, like any more that we have. The other thing was just when we'll get some more summary information to you. I think in our next meeting will be good, but because the Affordable Homes Act was passed, they'll just got the summary of the highlights. One thing is that accessory dwelling units or more will be 180 days or so, will be allowed to come off. So we'll get you kind of a cheat sheet on that, but in essence, it's the single family districts.
900 square feet or 50% of
the
primary residence square footage, which is less.
Right. So,
Single family and setbacks are accessory dwellings. I mean, it's gonna be accessory unit setbacks, 6 feet or what?
we're treating this, and for now, I think we treat that as a primary, even though it's accessory to that. I don't know that we would treat it as accessory to shed.
So it would have to adhere
Still
to
have to
primary.
meet, so you could build another building, so you still have to meet the.
The primary, setbacks as opposed to being the accessory, like a garage.
Yeah, not that 6 or 10 that we.
Yeah, that would apply here.
Okay,
Yeah.
and it's it's one single ADU per.
Correct. The community can require something like that. The second, the property can require to get some permit to do so. So you can get like even a number of accessory dwelling units.
Does that mean open space is out the window or?
No, they're both, there's some of these things, some of these things are gonna get flushed out. Be some more regulations.
Fleshed out or flushed?
Flushed out, sorry. Flushed out.
Same thing, okay?
Will be, by UHLC, which is the old DHCD. Because some of these things, the legislature can't possibly cover every term of definition, right? So some of this is gonna be flushed out a little further. Yeah, those are the basic parameters, and so.
So you need a really big property to build a separate under this new law, but you could build something that's attached to the main house. Which would.
You
be
could do
different.
that, yeah.
Well, in the western part of the city, and probably a little larger lots, a little easier probably to work with.
Yeah, you can do tiny homes.
Yeah.
We see those.
Well, that's like my neighbor was calling me asking questions across the street. and She's got a big lot. And I go, I understand from what I read in the paper, you probably could build a detached 3-car garage and live above it. If I read it correctly, or you could attach it to your house and live above it. But prior to this, I don't think you could have had a kitchen, but now I think you
Now you
can
can,
have.
Yes.
You could have had a kitchen under 9B, 2B3, and which is that if you meet the
In-law,
in-law special permit criteria. That doesn't run with the land, runs with the applicant, so an applicant has to come in every year and reestablish that criteria. Few do, but they're supposed to, right? So that
Yeah.
could go away.
That's actually the section we're gonna update, and not to say get rid of, but that's the section we're gonna update because it's no longer.
Yes, right. It's gonna be a brave new world.
Yeah.
We're gonna be seeing, you know what? It's not too late. Invest in a tiny home manufacturing.
Yeah. There's a lot of
Now I've
communities
got a few ideas.
now they're back. Yeah.
You know what? It's gonna be interesting. Took a lot of people by storm / But
It's a sweeping, I mean, from a housing perspective, it's necessary. No doubt. But it's definitely sweeping, I mean, with MBTA communities and this, these are more state giving some direction as opposed to saying, rule, it's a difference, right?
And look at it as the flavor of the month, because what's gonna happen is people are gonna work that zoning as far as they can, and the neighborhoods are gonna come around in 10 and 15 years and say, state rep, I want you to change the zoning, because we're overpopulating our area, like everybody's got to reach out, right?
Well, but and overpopulating with what, like, our aging in place parents and grandparents and our, sleeping in place teenagers.
Yeah. The constituency's gonna.
I'm all for it. I just see the world as.
Nobody's gonna be there. A whole gen, an entire demo of, of millennial or zillennials, late millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha are gonna, who right now look at the idea of ownership and they're like.
Yeah.
That's right.
But it's really gonna be a benefit in localities where there are jobs or closer proximity to
Absolutely.
jobs. Like,
Absolutely, yeah.
we're too far out. I mean,
Well, maybe the jobs that those, the demographic most inclined to want to take advantage of that, maybe those jobs will migrate as well.
you may, I mean, you can be an influencer from anywhere.
You can paddle kayak between Zoom. But there's only a few places you can paddle, you can paddle a kayak between Zoom calls.
There you go.
You gotta be near water.
It's here.
All right, let's call it. Motion to adjourn. Thank you.
So moved.
Okay, motion
Second.
carries, and have a great night. Hey, Gretchen, sorry about that. Hopefully you logged off.
No.
Gretchen's watching.